Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Speak Smart podcast. You ready for a deep dive? It's all about helping you speak confidently about family and friends, especially if you're learning English.
Sounds good.
And you know what? This episode is actually a listener recommendation.
Oh, really? That's meta.
Yeah, kind of meta, right?
Yeah.
But it's packed with vocab and cultural insights that'll help you navigate these relationships all around the world.
It is fascinating how language reflects the values and traditions, surrounding family and friends.
Exactly.
It's not just the words themselves, but understanding those nuances that reveal how different cultures view these connections.
That's a good point.
Yeah.
So let's start with the foundation family.
Okay.
The podcast starts by breaking down immediate family. So mother, father, siblings.
Right.
Those closest to you.
Uh-huh.
And did you know there's even a difference in pronunciation between the UK and US for mom?
Oh, really?
In the UK, it's mum with that short vowel sound.
Right. And that short U sound is so common in British English. It's those little details that can really make a difference when you're trying to sound more natural.
Totally.
Yeah.
The podcast also touches on extended family,
Right.
grandparents, aunts, uncles, cousins.
Right.
Those folks that make the family gatherings a little bit more lively.
Yeah.
But here's a thought-provoking point. The podcast emphasizes how aunt and uncle can be huge figures in some cultures, almost like second parents.
Wow.
It makes you realize how family structure shapes your entire perspective on relationships.
Absolutely. And the language used to address those relatives reflects that level of importance.
Oh, yeah.
In some cultures, there might be specific terms of respect for aunts and uncles that really acknowledge their role.
I never thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Now the podcast doesn't just stop at defining who's who in the family tree.
Right.
It encourages you to go beyond basic labels and describe your family members using vivid adjectives. They use examples like, my mother is very kind. She always helps others and has a warm smile. It's about painting a picture with words.
And that's where the real learning happens, right?
Right.
Moving beyond memorization to express yourself authentically. It's adding those brushstrokes of personality that bring your family to life.
So I'm curious, what adjectives would you use to describe your own family?
Oh, that's a good question.
Are they funny, supportive, adventurous?
I think my family is very supportive and caring.
Ah,
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah, and I think even just those simple adjectives can really reveal so much about a person's character.
Right.
And those values that are cherished within a family.
The podcast also reminds us that families come in all shapes and sizes. It's not just about the traditional nuclear family anymore. We talk about extended families, which are common in many parts of the world, and then touch on single-parent, blended, same-gender parent families.
Right.
It's important to recognize that diversity...
Absolutely. And language needs to keep pace with that,
Yeah.
We need inclusive terms that reflect the reality of different family structures.
Totally.
And it's encouraging to see that shift happening.
And speaking of evolution, the podcast highlights how family traditions vary across the globe.
Oh, interesting.
For example, did you know that in Italy, Sunday is traditionally family meal day?
I did not know that.
It's a tradition that brings everyone together, strengthens those bonds.
Food has such a way of connecting people.
Yeah.
Sharing a meal creates a sense of community, provides a space for conversation and memories.
Exactly.
It's no wonder so many cultures have traditions centered around food and family.
Totally. And how cool is this? In Japan, they have a special festival called Shichi-go-san
Okay.
for children aged 3, 5, and 7.
Wow.
It's a beautiful celebration of their growth and well-being.
Oh.
With special outfits and visits to shrines. It's like a cultural snapshot
I love that.
of how family is celebrated.
And then there's Mexico's Day of the Dead, where families remember and honor loved ones who've passed away. It's not a day of mourning, but a vibrant celebration of life.
I love that.
With, colorful decorations, food offerings, and joyful gatherings.
These traditions, while different in their expressions, all point to that universal desire to connect with loved ones, celebrate milestones, and create lasting memories.
That's beautiful.
And that brings us to another important aspect of human connection.
Okay.
Friendships.
Friendships are often called the family we choose, and for good reason.
Yeah.
They offer companionship support, a sense of belonging that can be just as strong as family ties.
Okay, let's break down the language of friendship.
Okay.
Starting with those all-important definitions.
Okay.
The podcast differentiates between a friend, a best friend, a close friend, and an acquaintance.
Right.
It seems simple, but those distinctions can be really important.
Yeah.
Especially when you're trying to express yourself accurately in another language.
And those definitions can be surprisingly fluid. Depending on the cultural context, in some cultures, friend is used more liberally.
Right.
While in others, it implies a much deeper level of commitment and trust.
Yeah.
Understanding those nuances can really help avoid misunderstandings.
Totally, and build stronger relationships.
Exactly.
So true.
Yeah.
And here's a fun language tip. The podcast introduces a bunch of verbs and phrases
Okay.
that go beyond just saying hanging out with friends.
Right.
We're talking get along with, make friends, keep in touch, lose touch.
Yes.
These verbs add nuance to your conversations and help you sound more fluent.
It's about expanding your vocabulary.
Yeah.
And becoming more articulate in expressing the dynamics of friendships.
Right.
If you can use a variety of verbs and phrases, you can tell much more engaging and compelling stories about your friendships.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's about taking your English to the next level
Exactly.
and expressing yourself with more precision and color.
I love that.
Now, just like with family, the podcast encourages you to go beyond simply naming your friends.
Okay.
They want you to bring them to life by describing their personalities, using vivid adjectives.
Okay.
They use examples like friendly, funny, loyal, generous,
Yeah.
and tie those traits to specific interests or hobbies.
And that's where descriptive language shines.
Totally.
Imagine you're telling someone about a friend who's a fantastic cook. You could say, my friend Maria is an incredible chef.
Yeah.
She can whip up a gourmet meal in minutes.
Love it.
That's so much more engaging than just saying Maria likes to cook.
Absolutely. You're painting a picture with words,
Exactly.
making your friends come alive for the listener. Now, let's get real for a moment.
Okay.
Making friends takes effort,
It does.
especially in new environments.
Yeah.
But the podcast offers some great tips,
Okay.
like being open and approachable, showing genuine interest in others, finding common interests, and taking the initiative to strike up conversations.
And those tips are surprisingly universal.
Yeah.
You know, even though customs and social norms differ, those fundamental principles of building friendships often transcend cultural boundaries.
That's a reassuring thought.
It's about being open to connection no matter where you are in the world.
But what happens after you've made those friends? How do you keep those connections strong?
The podcast emphasizes the importance of nurturing those relationships.
Yeah.
Through regular communication, supportive gestures, and shared experiences. It's about making time for those friendships, even when life gets busy.
It's like tending a garden.
Yeah.
You need to water those plants, give them sunlight, care for them.
Exactly.
If you want them to thrive.
Beautifully said.
And speaking of thriving, the podcast brings these ideas to life by sharing some heartwarming real-life friendship stories.
Oh, I love that.
And that's where we'll pick up in part 2.
Sounds good.
We'll dive into those stories, explore the cultural nuances of friendship, and uncover how technology is shaping the way we connect.
Can't wait.
Me too.
Yeah.
I'm excited for this next part.
Me too. Welcome back to the deep dive.
It's amazing how a simple podcast episode can spark such a fascinating conversation about something as fundamental as friendship.
Yeah. And you know what really struck me in the first part? The idea that aunt and uncle can hold such significance in certain cultures.
Right.
It makes you realize how much we take for granted about our own cultural norms around family and friends.
I know, it's so interesting.
And what's fascinating is how those cultural differences are often reflected in the language itself. For example, some languages have specific terms of address for older relatives that convey a level of respect that might not be as explicit in English.
That's so true. It reminds me of how much we can learn about a culture just by paying attention to the way they use language.
Yeah.
Speaking of language, you mentioned that the podcast shares some real-life friendship stories.
Yeah.
I'm curious to hear more about those.
Well, one story that stood out was about the host making a best friend in college. It highlights how shared experiences, especially those that involve navigating a new environment or overcoming challenges together, can really forge strong bonds.
I can relate to that. College was definitely a time when I formed some of my closest friendships.
Absolutely.
We were all going through so much change and growth.
Yeah.
And those shared experiences really brought us together.
Exactly. It's like you're building a shared history, a narrative that becomes part of your connection.
Right.
And that sense of shared history is often reinforced through rituals and traditions, birthday celebrations, holiday gatherings.
Yep.
Even just those regular coffee dates or movie nights.
Those traditions are so important. They give us something to look forward to.
Yeah.
And help us stay connected even when life gets busy.
Absolutely.
It's true.
And those connections can be even more meaningful when they span across cultures.
Right.
The podcast touches on the challenges and rewards of cross-cultural friendships, emphasizing the importance of open communication, curiosity, and a willingness to step outside of your comfort zone.
I think that's such an important point, especially in today's increasingly globalized world.
Right.
We have so many opportunities to connect with people from different backgrounds.
Yes.
And those cross-cultural friendships can enrich our lives in countless ways.
Absolutely. They expose us to new perspectives, challenge our assumptions, and broaden our understanding of the world.
And speaking of broadening our understanding, the podcast delves into how technology is shaping the way we form and maintain friendships. That's a bit of a double-edged sword, isn't it?
Definitely. On the one hand, technology has made it easier than ever to stay connected with friends, regardless of distance.
I agree.
We can video chat message, share photos and updates, and even participate in online communities that bring us together based on shared interests.
I can't imagine life without those tools.
Right.
It's so easy to stay in touch with friends who have moved away or to connect with like-minded people from all over the world.
It's amazing. But there's also a potential downside to all this connectivity.
Right.
The podcast cautions against relying too heavily on technology and emphasizes the importance of maintaining those face-to-face interactions that deepen our bonds and create lasting memories.
That's so true. It's easy to get caught up in the world of social media and online interactions.
Yes.
But those virtual connections can't fully replace the richness and intimacy of spending time with friends in person.
It's about finding that balance between the digital and the real, recognizing the value of both while prioritizing those genuine human connections that nourish our souls.
So how do we navigate this digital landscape?
Yeah, that's a question.
While staying true to the essence of what makes friendship so special. The podcast offers some practical tips for using technology effectively to enhance our relationships without sacrificing those face-to-face interactions that are so crucial.
One of the key takeaways is to be intentional with our online interactions.
Rather than just passively scrolling through social media, take the time to send personal messages, check in with friends, engage in meaningful conversations.
It's about making those small gestures that show you care and are thinking about them.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also stress the importance of being fully present during online conversations.
Oh, yeah.
Avoid multitasking, put away distractions.
Right.
And give your friend your undivided attention.
It's so easy to fall into the trap of checking emails or scrolling through social media while on a video call.
It is.
But it sends the message that you're not truly engaged in the conversation.
Right. Putting your phone down, turning off notifications, giving your friend your undivided attention shows that you value their company and are truly interested in what they have to say.
I'm definitely guilty of multitasking sometimes, but I'm trying to be more mindful about being present when I'm connecting with friends online. What other tips did the podcast offer?
They suggest scheduling regular check-ins with friends.
Whether it's a quick text message, a phone call, or a video chat.
That's a great idea. It helps keep those connections strong, even when life gets busy.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They also recommend planning virtual hangouts.
Oh, fun.
Schedule a movie night, a game session, or a virtual coffee date with friends to spend quality time together online.
I love that. It's like having a regular date night with your friends.
Right.
Even if you can't physically be in the same place.
Exactly.
So cool.
And don't underestimate the power of sharing experiences and interests online. Recommending a book, discussing a TV show, sharing a recipe.
Right.
These shared experiences can spark conversations and deepen your connection.
It's a way to keep those conversational fires burning and create a sense of shared history even when you're miles apart.
Exactly.
What other insights did the podcast offer about navigating the digital landscape of friendship?
They touched on the importance of using technology for collaborative purposes. Yeah. Tools like shared calendars, project management apps, or even just a group chat can be used to plan events, work on projects, or simply stay organized as a group.
I found that those collaborative tools can be really helpful for staying connected with friends, especially when you're working on something together. Yeah, it creates a sense of shared purpose and accomplishment.
Exactly. It's about taking those friendships beyond just casual conversations and creating something meaningful together.
Speaking of creating something meaningful, the podcast highlighted the importance of expressing gratitude and appreciation for our friends.
Yes.
A simple text message, a handwritten note, or even a virtual hug can go a long way in making your friends feel valued and loved.
It's about acknowledging those little acts of kindness and reminding each other that those friendships are precious.
So true. Those small gestures can make a big difference in strengthening our bonds and fostering a sense of mutual appreciation.
Absolutely.
But even with all the benefits technology offers, the podcast reminds us that it's important to be mindful of the potential pitfalls. They talked about the risk of miscommunication, the danger of digital overload, and the importance of protecting our privacy online.
It's easy to forget that online interactions don't always convey the same nuances as face-to-face conversations.
Totally.
A sarcastic comment can be easily misinterpreted in a text message. And a harmless joke can quickly escalate into an online conflict if tone and intent aren't clearly communicated.
I've definitely experienced that.
Yeah.
It's so important to be mindful of how our words might be perceived online.
Yes.
And to err on the side of clarity and kindness.
And then there's the danger of digital overload, with constant notifications, updates, and messages vying for our attention. It's easy to feel overwhelmed and exhausted by the constant stream of information.
I know that feeling all too well. Sometimes I just need to unplug, put my phone down, and take a break from the digital world.
It's crucial to set boundaries and manage our screen time to prevent burnout. Taking regular breaks from technology, setting specific times for checking emails and social media, and prioritizing offline activities can help us maintain a healthy balance.
And let's not forget about the importance of protecting our privacy online.
Absolutely.
It's easy to get caught up in the excitement of sharing our lives on social media, but it's important to be mindful of the information we're putting out there.
Yes.
And to take steps to secure our accounts and protect our personal data.
It's a good reminder to be thoughtful about our digital footprint. And to remember that anything we post online has the potential to be seen by a much wider audience than we might intend.
So with all these complexities to consider, how do we strike that balance between embracing the opportunities technology offers while mitigating the potential risks? The podcast emphasizes the importance of being intentional with our technology use. And prioritizing those genuine human connections that make friendships so special.
It's about using technology as a tool to enhance our relationships rather than letting it control our lives.
That's such a powerful insight. Technology can be a bridge, not a barrier to deeper connection. It's all about finding that balance.
Exactly. And that brings us to the heart of the matter. Nurturing those authentic, meaningful connections that bring joy, support, and enrichment to our lives.
And that's what we'll pick up in part 3.
Sounds good.
We'll explore the psychology of friendship, delve into the power of shared experiences, and uncover the secrets to building lasting bonds in a world that's constantly evolving.
I can't wait.
Welcome back to the Speak Smart podcast. I don't know about you, but after the last 2 parts of this deep dive, I am feeling so inspired to prioritize those meaningful connections in my life.
It's amazing how, exploring those nuances of language and culture can lead to such profound insights about something as fundamental as friendship.
I know.
It's a reminder that we're all connected in ways we might not even realize.
Absolutely. And speaking of connections, the podcast touched on something that really resonated with me. The idea that shared experiences are like the glue that holds friendships together.
There's actually a psychological basis for that.
Oh, really?
Shared experiences, especially those that involve novelty, challenge, or emotional intensity, create a sense of shared history and strengthen our bonds with others. Think about it. Those inside jokes, those funny stories you reminisce about, those moments of triumph or adversity you face together, those become part of your shared narrative, the fabric of your friendship.
It's like you're building a story together.
Exactly.
A story that only the two of you share. And that shared narrative creates a sense of intimacy and belonging that's hard to replicate through any other means.
It makes me think about all those rituals and traditions that revolve around friendship, birthday celebrations, holiday gatherings, even just those regular coffee dates or movie nights. Those are all opportunities to create shared experiences that reinforce our connections.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And those shared experiences don't have to be grand or extravagant.
Right.
Sometimes the simplest moments, a walk in the park, a spontaneous phone call, a shared meal, can create the most lasting memories. I've got to admit, even though I love connecting with friends online, there's nothing quite like hanging out in person, laughing together, sharing stories, and just enjoying each other's company without the distractions of the digital world.
Those face-to-face interactions are invaluable.
Yeah.
They allow us to pick up on nonverbal cues, deepen our understanding of each other, and build a sense of trust and intimacy that's harder to cultivate online.
So how do we make sure we're nurturing those real-life connections in a world that's increasingly digital? The podcast offers some practical advice, emphasizing the importance of being intentional with our time and making an effort to schedule regular in-person hangouts with friends.
It might seem counterintuitive to schedule time for spontaneity, but sometimes we need that little nudge to prioritize those important connections.
I love the idea of putting it on the calendar, like an actual appointment with a friend.
Yeah.
It shows that you value that relationship and are committed to making time for it, even amidst the busyness of life.
And those in-person hangouts don't have to be elaborate or time-consuming. A quick coffee date, a walk in the park, a game night at home. It's the quality time that matters, not the quantity.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And while we're on the subject of quality time, the podcast also highlights the importance of being present and engaged during those in-person interactions. Put away your phone, resist the urge to check social media, and give your friend your undivided attention.
It's a simple gesture, but it speaks volumes about your respect and care for the other person.
Right.
It shows that you're truly interested in what they have to say and that you value their company above all else.
And don't forget the power of nonverbal communication.
Oh, yes.
A hug, a pat on the back, even just a friendly touch on the arm can create a sense of warmth and connection that words sometimes can't express.
We're social creatures hardwired for connection and touch.
That's true.
Those physical gestures of affection and support can be incredibly powerful in strengthening our bonds with others.
You know, one thing that struck me while listening to the podcast was how much there is to learn about cultural differences when it comes to friendship. We got a little glimpse of how those differences might play out, but there's so much more to explore.
It's a fascinating topic.
Yeah.
And one that's often overlooked. What might be considered a perfectly normal level of friendliness in one culture could be seen as overly familiar or even disrespectful in another.
Oh, I can definitely see how that could lead to misunderstandings. And it's not just about personal space or physical touch. Cultural differences can also influence communication styles, expectations around reciprocity, and even the very definition of what it means to be a friend.
Absolutely. Think about how different cultures view time and punctuality.
Yeah.
In some cultures, being on time is essential, a sign of respect and reliability, while in others, a more relaxed approach is the norm. Those differences can create friction in friendships if they're not understood and respected.
It's a good reminder to be mindful of those cultural differences and to approach cross-cultural friendships with a sense of curiosity and openness. Instead of making assumptions, ask questions, observe, and be willing to learn from your friend's perspective.
That's the beauty of cross-cultural friendships. They challenge us to expand our horizons, step outside of our comfort zones, and embrace the diversity of human experience.
It's like a crash course in empathy and understanding, a reminder that there's always more to learn about the world and the people in it.
And who knows, you might even pick up a new language or two along the way.
That's true. But even beyond the cultural nuances, there's a universal truth that shines through in all these conversations about friendship. The idea that friends are the family we choose.
That's a powerful statement.
It is.
It speaks to the profound impact that friendships can have on our lives.
It really does. For some people, their chosen family of friends is even more important than their biological family.
Absolutely.
They provide a sense of belonging, support, and unconditional love that's essential to our well-being.
It makes you realize how important it is to nurture those friendships and to appreciate the unique role they play in our lives.
As we wrap up this deep dive into the world of family and friends, what are some key takeaways for our listeners?
I think the biggest takeaway is that connection is essential to human happiness.
I agree.
Whether it's with family, friends, or even those we encounter in our daily lives, those connections nourish our souls and make life worth living.
And those connections require effort, intention, and the willingness to be present, vulnerable, and supportive.
Absolutely.
Whether it's through shared experiences, acts of kindness, or simply making time for those who matter most, we have the power to strengthen those bonds and create a more connected and fulfilling life for ourselves and those around us.
Beautifully said.
Thank you for listening to the Speak Smart podcast. We hope this deep dive has inspired you to connect with the people who matter most and to appreciate the richness and diversity of human relationships. Subscribe to my channel and hit that like button if you're ready to speak confidently about the people who make your life brighter.